better to be in a race car because it's ideal. It's not too hot where you're burning through the tyres. It's certainly not too cold where you're struggling to warm them up. I mean, these guys aren't even having to weave around to warm up. They have the confidence in their tyres in towards turn one already.
Harry Brooks in the purple and green number 77 will lead the field to green at Mugello. The iRacing Porsche pace car will pull off, take a hard right, and leave the field in control of Kerry Brooks. It's a slightly underdog story to kick things off. We didn't expect Kerry Brooks to put it on pole. Derek Cypher's very fast in practice. Bryce Rodriguez very fast in qualifying. And now Kerry prepares to hold them all back. It's the penultimate round of the championship. We're going to set the championship field. And we're ready for 40 minutes of racing as we're green at Mugello. It's a nice start from Brooks, but there's a little bit of bump drafting on the right side as Jesse Lyon and Derek Cyphers are locked in line together. Jesse Lyon in that red and blue satellite racing entry peeks to the inside of Brooks. They're 3 wide into turn one as Derek Cyphers makes it work around the outside.
How did they survive that? 3 wide and so close to contact on the way towards turn one. Derek Cyphers able to just use a bit of the outside and a bit of just isolation there. The fact that he wasn't 3 wide and nearly bumping into 2 people at once gave him the lead there ahead of Kerry Brooks, and it's still going on here into 4 and 5 side by side in the field. Bryce Rodriguez hangs on ahead of Nicky Chan, and further back it's all going on. Chad Henson seems to have had problems early on, and luckily for the championship protagonists, Chris Pye seems to have got through the opening lap with 2 places, or the opening sector anyway, with 2 places gained. Logan Grado still in it as well in 14th.
That smoke makes the Connecticut viewers cry as Logan Henson went around. Stephen Kemp got into some trouble as well in the number 37, tipped around in the second chicane and backs it into the wall. Damage to the rear end of that very, very shiny Porsche. But up front, Derek Cyphers, that was aggressive view, and that was the driver confident in the heat of those tires, confident on the brakes into turn one. And that was absolutely massive. A second lead already as the 11 and the 4, Chris Cook and Thomas Briggs, side by side into a very high-speed chicane. That is very difficult to do, and Briggs hangs on.
That's Biondetti, where you really want to be single file. It's flat out, whether you are or not, but nevertheless, you want to be taking the right line through there. That's, speaking of the right line, that wasn't it from Christopher Cook, and so Robbie Prescott goes through into 8th place. But I was speaking about a good start for Chris Pies to get up into 13th from 15th on the grid for him. He's still there, but Thomas Briggs has also made up a couple of places here, so that's the important gap to note and the important 2 drivers as far as this championship goes.
I'm going to have my championship points on my second monitor. We're going to do some calculations to make sure we can set you the championship field for next week and the week after. For now, racing conditions. Jesse Lyon and Kerry Brooks going at it for P2. Maybe a little bit tentative on the start from Brooks Ewan. Slightly unexpected qualifying result. Maybe the slightest bit of discomfort starting up at the front. Maybe that's what made the difference with Cyphers being able to sweep around the outside.
I think so, but as I said at the start, the fact that Cyphers wasn't actually near anybody, I think really helped. He was just able to focus on his own braking zone, his own line on the way into there, whereas everyone was worrying about everybody else into the inside. What has gone on here? Oh dear, little Eddie is into the wall, and that wasn't smart. Czesosnowski also dropping down, by the way, as a result of problems. So there's been a bit going on there, because I saw bodywork all over the place at 2 and 3 there.
Yeah, the 222 of Peter Sigourney on the outside there already looked very heavily damaged before that was going on. A little bit of craziness in the back of the field. There are actually cautions enabled in this series. If there's a big enough crash, there can be a yellow flag thrown by the admins, but we've been very lucky. That hasn't happened in the last couple of races. Zandvoort, after the first race, was very clean. Mugello's been very clean so far. We've made sure to keep green flag racing going for 40 full minutes in all of these series. The draft's going to come into effect now, though. Slightly diminished draft in these GT3 style cars, but it's still very effective. It's a very long front straight here into a heavy braking zone, and Thomas Briggs is looking to use that on Matthew Siddall, sends it to the inside, but can't make it happen, not late enough on the brakes.
Now this may start to become the problem. We were speaking about this at Zandvoort a couple of weeks ago. You don't want the driver in front of you to get comfortable. We say it time and time again. You've got to use that element of surprise. And once you're there for a while, surprise disappears, as it does in all walks of life. And Thomas Briggs will feel the same very shortly with Matthew Siddle, unless he gets a move on here, as Derek Cyphers is going to lose the lead.
Oh my goodness, was that a slowdown from Derek Cyphers?
Yeah,
The second we look away, has to check up, lets Brooks through, lets Lyon through, and that very much looked like a slowdown, Ewan.
It did. Don't really know where it would have been, but these curbs are so climbable in the GT cars and these sort of road style cars that even at 4 and 5 you might be able to pick one up. And here goes Bryce Rodriguez down the inside. This is on now down into turn 10 and 11. Rodriguez on the outside for 11 will give him the inside for the hairpin at 12. He's going to chase him to the left hand side of the road as well. Slightly intimidated. Derek Cyphers gets on the brakes a little bit early, and the 24 car is onto a provisional podium place.
If you get your chance to pounce, you're going to take it. That's exactly what Bryce Rodriguez did there. Don't know when you're going to get another chance to try and get by Derek Cyphers. And now, as soon as Cyphers looked like he was going to be able to run away with this race, he's got the ultimate comeback on his hands. 3 cars to pass, and the pole sitter, Brooks, takes the lead back. But Jesse Lyon within draft range, very close. Probably not close enough to go for a dive into turn 1. But suddenly this race got much, much closer, and I have a feeling we're going to see quite a bit more action now for the final 35 minutes.
I get the feeling we are. We're seeing such a dynamic start to this race. At Zandvoort, for example, the leaders got away well. We got to single file early, and we had to wait for the pit stops for the action to happen. But already in these first 5 minutes, we're seeing plenty going on. Kerry Brooks back in the lead, but not looking comfortable necessarily in the lead. This race is very much on, and there's a lot of people who can win this.
And a lot of the drivers in the lead of this race, graduates from the club class last season. Robbie Prescott, Chris Cook, Kerry Brooks, Peter Sigourney, Lyle Eady, to name quite a few. They were drivers in the second tier series in the club class last season, but with their success, they were promoted up one into the pro series, and they're doing a fantastic job. Chris Pies, Jesse Lyon, those guys, Chris Braun, they were in the pro series last season. Interesting to see the blend here. Drivers coming up the ladder, drivers staying at the top of the ladder. They're blending quite evenly today.
They are, and it's wonderful to see. As I mentioned earlier, I think the qualifying times were a good cover of that, because this is not a short racetrack, and it's one of those tracks where you can gain and lose a lot of time. So it's worth noting that those times were so close. That is a good sign, keeps things close, but normally that just means single file racing and close racing, but not at the moment, not so far. I've seen plenty of side by side. By the way, a bit more region watch for you. Yellowstone region, I know where that is, but not where, if you see what I mean. I know what that's a reference to, but I don't know where in America that is. So there you go, that's another region for you.
You've read my mind, because I literally had that tab open on the left side of my screen. Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho. An assortment of counties around the Yellowstone National Park. And they're represented. It's a part of the country we don't often have represented in sim racing, or in any racing for that matter. Drivers from Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, but that's the power of sim racing. Even if you're in the middle of nowhere, as long as you got Wi-Fi, you can participate.
Exactly.
You don't even need Wi-Fi for that matter. You could be on a mobile hotspot for all I know.
Yeah, well, exactly. You ever heard the story of Josh Rogers doing that about 8 years ago? In a V8 supercar race, back when he was not rising through the ranks. He was quite an established name, but very much contained to the Australian market, if you like. And once raced on a hotspot because his internet went out at his home. As we look at a replay here of Joe Sinclair on the second and third corner. Oh dear, that curve's not nice, is it? Said you can climb those curves. Well, not quite like that. He ended up in the gravel on that occasion.
Italian sausages strike again, unfortunately. You may find some delicious sausages in Tuscany with some nice fennel and garlic and basil, but I don't know. What are those average sausage curves made of? Just very hard plastic, concrete?
Yeah, maybe concrete. I don't know, but they should get rid of them anyway.
They should be made of nothing.
Well, exactly. There's not even any need there, is there? There's gravel on the inside.
Exactly.
That's what you need. So anyway, we'll have that discussion on another day. But Mugello does a good job of that in general. It's one of those circuits that does punish your errors. It does enforce track limits on its own for the most part, and that can only be a good thing, and hopefully it remains that way. As Thomas Briggs once again gets close to Matthew Siddle. mentioned earlier on that he needed to get it done quickly. Well, he hasn't done, and look at those time gaps and gains and losses. They're very minimal, and that's because he's stuck here, stuck again into turn 1.
Vidal's been very, very aggressive, but definitely needs another inch or two to actually make that move happen. But this is far more competitive than we've seen in some of the previous races, in some of the lower series. And I do wonder if that has something to do with the open setup of these top 2 series. In the Pro Series and in the second tier series, you can build your own setup. You can choose whether you want to reward yourself in a straight line in that long front straight, or if you want a little bit more downforce for all these high-speed corners. And I think with that diversity, we're seeing some drivers able to take advantage of that long front straight and actually make overtakes possible in a way that they weren't in the draft trains of some of the fixed series.
Yeah, maybe that's playing a role, but I can't help but feel like, just from an outsider's point of view, I've not driven this circuit in this car, but I get the feeling that most of these drivers are going for high downforce setups today, because that seems to make sense with the amount of corners, high-speed corners as well, that are really key in these GT3 cars. So I don't think it's about the level of downforce that they've got on, but just the internals more, trying to make it drive nicer for you. Whether that's contributing to the racing or not remains to be seen, and I don't really know whether that is the answer or not, but it does seem to be a lively opening to this race, and that is a great thing. Jesse Lyon, for example, under a bit of pressure from Bryce Rodriguez there. Matthew Siddle has been holding off a number of drivers for quite some time now. An update, by the way, on the others. Chris Pies has been overtaken on Logan Grado, so he's lost a place and another point.
Not ideal. Very much not ideal for him. Another peek to the inside by Thomas Briggs. Once again, showing Matthew Siddall that he's there, making sure he knows that he's still seen in those mirrors, but not quite close enough to go for a legitimate overtake, and Siddall keeps it moving. But we're past 10 minutes in this race now. About 28 minutes to go, and the first pit stops have already kicked off. Some drivers thinking about getting out of their lines, getting out of being held up in traffic. Enrico Gregorato, James Huth, and Chad Sosnowski, they're deciding to kick off the pit cycle fairly early, earlier than we normally see, but it's a wide open pit window in this series.
It is, that's a great thing, by the way, but it does mean that the field can be quite spread apart for some time, in terms of we don't quite know where everybody is until about 10 minutes to go, maybe 12 minutes to go, so we'll wait for that moment. However, it's good to see some early stops. I think that's only a luxury, though, afforded to those down at the back of the field. Can't see Thomas Briggs, for example, doing this, ducking in early, because all he'll do is end up in further traffic and slower traffic than he's in right now.
Your eyes do not deceive you. There is indeed a second satellite racing car in this race. Robbie Prescott a little bit further back in that number 1, and he's sporting the number 1 as the defending champion of the series last season. So trying to keep that alive. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he was actually the defending champion of the club class, second tier series, got promoted up to the pro class, but still gets the number 1. Jesse Lyon, the defending champion of the pro class, I think he decided to stick with the number 115, which you can do as well.
I suppose it's within the rules, but if I was a series winner, I would be sticking the number 1 on at the first opportunity, to be honest with you.
There you go.
So there you go. Fair play to him for not. But yeah, great success for satellite racing in that respect then, because you may note the similar livery. In fact, the pretty much identical livery between the two of them. To have a couple of them in the top 10 is a great thing, but neither of them with particularly eye-opening seasons just yet. Jesse Lyon 14th in the points, no podiums. Robbie Prescott 18th in the points, no podiums either. Best result for either of them, a 6th position, which is lower than Jesse Lyon is at the moment. Could be a season record-breaking day for him.
Another look back at the Matthew Siddall train. It's actually stratified a little bit. Thomas Briggs not really able to stick with him through the middle sector, but getting very wide through the middle of Arrabbiata was Siddall there, almost clipping the gravel. There's still mistakes in this series. There's still mistakes in this class. This may be the highest level of driver, but it's Mugello. It is tough. It wears you out. It wears the tires out. And it was only a small bobble for Matthew Siddall this time, but still 26 minutes left to go. Plenty more opportunities for those tires to start to fall off, for driver error to come into effect. So we ride on board with Bryce Rodriguez now. The top 3 separated by only 0.6. one single error, one single bobble in this group means that somebody else has taken the lead. It's a knife's edge up top.
It really is, and you've got to dance that line expertly. And look at everybody's sort of nervousness there as they come out the final corner. Just saw a couple of slight movements to the right as if to say, I'm coming in maybe, no I'm not, okay, we'll stay out for another lap, and you would imagine they will for another 10 minutes or so maybe. Here goes Bryce Rodriguez looking to the inside. It's a long braking zone downhill here, and he just about pulls it up in time to avoid the back of Jesse Lyon.
Critically, still keeping in control, or still keeping within the range of Kerry Brooks to keep this battle alive. That's exactly what you want when you're trying to battle like that. You don't want to run side by side. You don't want to slow each other down and drop out of contention. If you're not able to make the move, you're going to want to be able to slot back in line and try and go for another shot. But even as they continue to battle in this top three, look who's coming back into consideration. Derek Cyphers, the race leader of the first few minutes. He's trying to make this comeback drive happen, and he has slowly but surely been working his way forward. He was the fastest driver on track on that last lap with a 1:47.4. He's only been taking slight bites away, but he's definitely going to make this a four-car battle in a couple of laps' time.
I'm just not sure he's going to be able to still win this race. I feel like his qualifying pace has very much outdone his race pace. Maybe that is being slightly hidden at the moment by the fact that he did have that slowdown penalty. Do we really know his true race pace right now? Maybe the answer to that is no, but still think that we've seen enough from this first 15 minutes that Derek Cyphers is going to find this difficult in terms of winning the race. But you never know when a leading battle kicks off. It allows everybody else to catch up, because when there's a fight, the drivers behind are able to use the right lines and close in as a result. But for now that's not happening. Derek Cyphers is under pressure of his own anyway from Nicky Chan in the 000.
And nobody deciding to peel down pit lane. Still a little bit too much of a risk. Still potentially some traffic in the rearview mirror, but nothing changing for the moment. Nicky Chan from the rear bumper cam of Derek Cyphers, one by one there. You didn't miss anything with Brooks, Lyon, or Rodriguez either, as they were line astern into turn one. Got fairly close for P1, but Lyon definitely needs to figure out somewhere to get a better run, because so far Brooks has been excellent through turn 15, the final corner onto that long front straight. That's the most critical corner on the track. Every other corner is fairly important as well, but it's tough to pass everywhere else. And in the one corner where it matters, Brooks has been eternally frustrating for Jesse Lyon.
Yeah, it has been so far. And just a slight miss of the apex there through Arrabbiata 1 will extend the gap even further, and that's what we're seeing now with this front three. A bit of an extending of the margin between them all. Now, just to update you on the back of the field, by the way, well, not the back of the field, but the midfield particularly, Logan Grado has been into the pit lane. That's a surprise to me. Third in the championship, taking a risk like that. Mark Nister also fourth in the points, has taken a risk, and they've tell you what they've done, ended up in the exact train that they were in anyway. So they've all had the same idea to get out of the group, and in so doing they've created their own.
Got to be careful, and these are drivers who generally are racing on their own. There are not crews of people deciding strategies here. You might have a virtual crew chief who can decide how much to fuel your car, can maybe tell you a pit delta even, but there are not strategists behind the pit wall for these drivers. They're doing it all themselves, and that makes it that much more open to the possibility of making a mistake, of ending up in traffic, of doing something that is not conducive to a good result. You got the Christmas tree on the side of your screen. We've had some big movers. Robbie Prescott up 3 spots from where he started, and then basically everybody down to the end of the table up a couple of spots, other than some of those drivers who had trouble. And you briefly saw it as well. Justin Sang, that driver who did not get a lap in qualifying, well, he was very fast last season. He's been very fast this season, and it should be no surprise. He's up 17 spots from 32nd.
Anyone else to do well to overtake him in terms of most places made today, but that's a really impressive number to have accrued at a circuit like Mugello, which is pretty difficult to overtake on, as we've seen with this front three now for the last 10 minutes or so. They have been following one another really, but that's not the case for Sang, and maybe he'll be beginning to wonder what could have been if there was a better qualifying, because of course he was the only driver in the field not to set a time.
This time by at the line, it's going to be halfway. So does anybody decide to go a little bit off strategy? Bryce Rodriguez potentially. Has he been getting held up, or has he just been running exactly the same pace as Jesse Lyons? He takes a peek to the inside through Corintayo, but once again, the gap is not there, not totally open to fully stick that car to the inside. And Bryce Rodriguez learns that a nose is not quite enough into turn 15, not even going to go for an attempt. Gonna think about the long way around with the switchback to the late apex. We could have a battle into turn 1, but it's very much going to be for second, as Jesse Lyons says, I'm minimizing my losses. I'm coming down pit lane now, and Jesse Lyons, the first biter out of these lead drivers.
Good idea, really, because all that was going to happen into turn 1, I think, was an overtake there for Bryce Rodriguez. That's only going to cost Jesse Lyons time, and so you might as well quit while you're ahead, get into the pit lane. But the problem is going to be where you come out. Mark Nister is leading that group of drivers who have already pitted. Drawhorn, Logan Grado and Chris Brown are all involved there. Can he get ahead of those guys? And if he can, will he find himself in a bit of free air to use his speed?
Remember the pit stop time for Jesse Lyons, 10.3 seconds. It could all come down to who can put that littlest bit of fuel in the car, who can have the shortest pit stop to end up winning this race. Jesse's come out in somewhat clean air, about 1 second behind Dale Green. Depending on how fast he is, he could be in trouble running into the back of Green and Rich Minkler and a few other drivers back there. But I think he might just be okay. There's not much dirty air up front as things have separated a little bit, with Lyon leaving this train. It's a 1 second gap back to Rodriguez. And Cyphers, despite me mentioning how quick he was, he's not really been quite as dominantly quick as he once was. He's still faster than Brooks and Rodriguez lap by lap, but there's just been little mistakes every couple of laps that drop him back and lose him all the time he's made up.
Yeah, exactly. We saw that just as we were commenting on it last. There was a pretty big mistake that allowed another gap to open. So yeah, for that reason, I said it earlier on, I don't think Derek Cyphers is going to be in the conversation for the win here. I think it's going to be between Kerry Brooks, Bryce Rodriguez and Jesse Lyon, although it really matters how quickly he gets past Dale Green, who he's already caught for 19th position. Meanwhile, Leif Peterson and Christopher Pies fight for 9th position in the field. This is not quite representative of where they are in the race because of those who have pitted already, but they are in clean air, so could do the overcut if you like.
Far back for Pies this time. You see the lap comparison, very, very similar, and that's kind of frustrating when you're in a battle like that. If you're faster in the first two sectors, but just losing out in that final sector, as I mentioned with Brooks and Lyon before, you really need to be fast in that final sector. You need an excellent run out of the final corner. You need to be fast in a straight line to make an overtake around here. And Pies definitely getting frustrated back there. Briggs, though, gets through on Siddall a little bit further back, and Siddall's falling down the order. That smells to me like another slowdown, Derek Cyphers style.
It looks like it, because there's no obvious damage. He doesn't seem to have been in the gravel, although he could have been. And that promotes Thomas Briggs up another place. Now it will become 6th place, because surely they'll all be overtaken again by Jesse Lyon when everybody else comes in. But this is once again great news for Thomas Briggs, who looks like he's going to gain points today and set up a frankly enthralling finale with Christopher Pies, the championship leader, who may well lose some points today.
If things finish as they are, and I'm putting Jesse Lyon ahead of both of these drivers as an assumption, if Briggs finishes 6th, he gets 15 points. If Pies finishes 11th, he gets 10 points. That is a 5-point difference. The current championship difference is 9 points. That means that going into the Daytona road course, Pies would still have the slightest of championship leads by only 4 points. And the difference between 1st and 2nd, what is that? But 4 points. We could be going into a tiebreaker scenario. It is going to get very, very exciting at Daytona next week. But it's getting very exciting at Mugello, for that matter, as Rodriguez has decimated the gap up to Brooks for P1. It was almost a shot into turn 1 there.
Yeah, Bryce Rodriguez is looking really quick now on low fuel, and this is dangerous for the end of the race. If he's not leading by that point, then watch out in those final moments, because he's really speedy at the moment. Now Jesse Lyon might be enjoying this, because the fact that the two of them are fighting with one another is good news, although saying that, Jesse Lyon has still not found his way past Dale Green. The last lap was a 48.1. That was slower than these two leaders here. Kerry Brooks himself today, 47.8. That's not the impressive one. 47.3 from Bryce Rodriguez. That's an insane lap time and a lot quicker than Jesse Lyon's able to do. Now Lyon's only just now been able to find his way past Dale Green.
Down the hill, high speed right, high speed left. Rodriguez all over the back of Brooks. And when does that pit lane call finally come? We saw in the previous classes you could go all the way to about 10 minutes to go. You can run half an hour on a tank of fuel here. Do you really want to go that far? Do they want to take the risk of ending up a little bit further back? Cook and Siddall were side by side for just a moment. Siddall gets through, and that's one spot gained once again after losing it from a slowdown. Siddall's drive forward continues as well. He's also one of the fastest drivers on track right now.
There he is. Oh, careful in the aqua blue Porsche. Christopher Cook trying to run his way down the inside. Can't do it though. I'm not sure where Siddall's found this pace from, to be honest, but he is a lot quicker right now, and so's Bryce Rodriguez. Look at this for the lead. Ooh. He's looking for the inside. An almost impossible gap into turn one, but Kerry Brooks left a car width, and Bryce Rodriguez was all too happy to fill it.
One singular car width, nothing more, nothing less. That's all Kerry gave him, and Bryce took advantage. Rodriguez becomes the third leader of this race so far, one of the most competitive we've had all season, and now he tries to set his sights forward and run away, extend this gap as much as humanly possible before having to come down pit lane.
And this is so ominous for the end of this race, with Jesse Lyon stuck in traffic, Kerry Brooks now in the rearview mirror. Bryce Rodriguez is looking good for a race win here at Mugello, and even if he's not in the lead at the exit of the pit lane, I expect he will be, but even if he's not, he's got that sort of pace on, low fuel to fall back on. Not really sure how he's found so much speed late on here in this first stint, but my goodness, he's almost unbeatable at the moment.
Brooks might even be in danger of losing second here before the pit stop comes around, as Cyphers has absolutely decimated that gap as well. It's almost looking like the way Rodriguez took that down, but this could be a critical championship position. I mentioned the difference between first and second is 4 points. If Pies can get back Peterson, that gives him an extra point. That would mean he had a 5-point championship advantage over Thomas Briggs in the championship finale next week. Every one of those points is going to matter. You want to be in the most comfortable possible position once that championship finale comes around. You don't want to have to do any more work than you really have to once the pressure comes, and it is pit stop time. Brooks and Cyphers bring it down simultaneously. Rodriguez elects to go one more time around. Chan does as well, but now we wait for the blend between these two, and critically, the blend about 30 seconds back with Jesse Lyon coming down.
Yeah, that's going to be the crucial one here. Lyon has had a couple of clean laps now, 47.6 on that last one, which was quicker than Kerry Brooks' previous laps. Obviously quicker than the one that's just ended because he's come into the pit lane. But Jesse Lyon has recovered some of that damage. Now, whether he's recovered enough, I'm not convinced personally, but he will hope so. 10.3 seconds for Brooks. It's exactly the same as Jesse Lyon's stop.
I hope we can see the blend, as I think Lyon and Cyphers are coming out fairly close to each other. Lyon does get past Cyphers into turn one, but not past Brooks critically. Slots in the middle of the sandwich, and that is very unfortunate for Lyon. Yeah, he's not going to end up in the lead. He's going to end up in second at the absolute best. How's the blend going to be with Bryce Rodriguez this time around? That's going to be the real question. The battle for the top 10 is on for everybody else, but the battle for the lead, if Bryce Rodriguez can have a normal stop, a 10-second stop, no penalties, no trouble on pit lane, he should theoretically be able to come out with a fairly sturdy lead here.
And it really makes you wonder where Jesse Lyon would have been had he not been behind Dale Green for a couple of laps. He surely would have been ahead of Kerry Brooks and maybe in the lead past Bryce Rodriguez as well, but a 48.0 from the last lap is slowing down for Bryce Rodriguez. He's maybe not quite as quick as he was previously. Now he'll come into pit lane though. You can just see him not using quite all of the apex there because he needs to give himself some space to turn in here and get slowed up in time. And so now the crucial blend. Not everybody's in. It looks like Robbie Prescott will continue on, but he won't matter for the moment. It's all going to be about Kerry Brooks, Jesse Lyon and Derek Cyphers. How many of those drivers get ahead of Bryce Rodriguez?
For every driver not named Robbie Prescott, this is the hard end of the fuel tank. There are drops in there at this moment. And this is going to be the most important blend you see. The clock ticks up for Rodriguez. 10.11 seconds, actually. That is 1 second lost. This is going to be pretty close on pit lane exit. Where does Rodriguez come out in relation to Brooks? You see the shiny purple and green car of Brooks coming by just then. Now Rodriguez crawls off pit lane. Brooks comes with a full head of steam. It's just going to be enough for Rodriguez to hold on, though. The rhythm needs to set in, though, for Rodriguez. Brooks is on slightly hotter tires. The tires didn't change, but they were stopped for 10 seconds for Rodriguez. And this is the time for Brooks to pounce. If he wants to get back by, he might just have a lap to do it before Rodriguez takes off into the sunset.
Yeah, it's that element of surprise again. He has to do it right now, but I don't think he's going to be able to. Bryce Rodriguez will be in the rhythm again very soon. Rob Rodriguez Jr., meanwhile, making his way out of the pit lane with the likes of Joe Sinclair recovering from that trip into the gravel earlier on. But there it's the battle for what will be the lead. Robbie Prescott and Richard Woodruff, for whatever reason, have been able to squeeze an extra lap out of the tank that the others have not.
Absolute magic. And got to give a shout out to Richard Woodruff. We talked about Justin Sang driving his way through the field. Woodruff is going to drop down the order after he makes his pit stop, but I think he's still going to end up in the top 20. And with an off-strategy move with some fuel saving, this could definitely be a drive forward for Woodruff and a somewhat improved result from what he would have gained otherwise without going off strategy. This honestly looks to me like Kerry Brooks is running out of steam, though, Ewan. It looks like those tires are starting to wear a little bit because Rodriguez blew by. It looked like Cyphers was going to be on the attack before the pit stop. And now Jesse Lyon, who currently sits in overall third once they get by Prescott and Woodruff, he's absolutely hounding Brooks as well.
Yeah, you might be right. I was saying that it was Bryce Rodriguez's speed that was the impressive part towards the end of the stint, but maybe it's Kerry Brooks falling away slightly as they go past the stoppers. Robbie Prescott will be near these guys, but Bryce Rodriguez will be the leader. There's no doubt about that one. Then Kerry Brooks. Jesse Lyon is still quick, but it's such a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation if you're third. If you try and overtake and get into second place, then the leader will get away because you're fighting with second place. If you don't try and get through into second place, then you won't win because you're in third and you don't have the chance to overtake first when you're in third. So what does Jesse Lyon do here? It's an impossible task to solve.
And that blend between Thomas Briggs and Robbie Prescott. Briggs has come out just ahead. Championship has suddenly gotten slightly less close. 6th place for Briggs, as I previously mentioned, would give him a certain amount of points that I've already forgotten, 15 points. And if Chris Pies finishes 9th, that'll give him 12 points. That would mean a 6-point difference in the championship coming into Daytona. And that would mean the difference between 1st and 3rd, for example, or the difference between 4th and 11th. Suddenly that means it's that much less likely that Briggs can take it from behind. He definitely needs to find a way to get some kind of extra point or hope that Chris Pies runs into trouble to make it that much more comfortable.
Well, let's just talk about how that actually transpired, though, for a second here, Joey, because we saw earlier on Chris Pies was in 15th place in qualifying. He did get up to 13th with a couple of overtakes in the first stint, but it was nothing special. It was those coming in ahead of him who have made the mistake here. Mark Nister has already been out there for 11 laps since his stop. So has Logan Grado. They ended up slowing each other down, I think. Nick Facciolo as well was a bit earlier than Pies. So was Chris Braun as well, who joined those guys, Nister and Grado. So effectively, those guys all got together and slowed each other down. Chris Pies was out there on lower fuel, admittedly out there in the higher positions, which he's now lost some of course, but look at the train he's ahead of. He's just a second ahead of a 6-car train, all fighting for 10th position. He's done remarkably well out of this.
I think we may have written off Kerry Brooks a little bit too early as well. Mentioned potentially the fall off, might even be in the conversation for losing second, but on that last lap, equal pace with Rodriguez. In the first sector, faster than Rodriguez. I think the race for the win might be back on in these final 6 minutes.
Could be, it really could. It's such a race of swings and roundabouts, isn't it? 40 minutes is a relatively long time around a circuit that will chew through your tyres if you're not careful with them. And maybe Bryce Rodriguez has gone a little bit too early, got a little bit excited on that low fuel with the ambition of leading the race here, but Kerry Brooks is not going to let this one go easily, and he's going to begin to apply that pressure as well. Will Rodriguez be able to sustain that pressure and keep his eyes forward rather than mirror driving, if you like, and slowing himself down?
Cyphers has joined the train as well. It's not going to be a win for him. He's going to be thinking about what might have been back there. If it wasn't for that one slowdown, he might be about 5 seconds in the lead right now, but one mistake is all it takes to take you out of contention. With the competition in this series, with the closeness and parity of these drivers and these cars, that one mistake can really take you out of things. Down the front straight, though, we're going to cross the line with about 5 minutes, 10 seconds to go. If my math is correct, which I think it actually is for once, that is 3 laps to go. If you're going to want to make a move, you're going to need to do it soon. You don't get many of those opportunities to do it around here. You've only got a few more left.
It's now or never, especially for Jesse Lyon. If he wants to win this race, he needs to overtake Kerry Brook very quickly, and then get up to Bryce Rodriguez very quickly and overtake him too. The odds for him winning the race diminishing as we speak, but Kerry Brooks is still within this race, and maybe it will be last lap chances for him if he wants to try and go for this. The best overtaking opportunity on this circuit, indisputably, is turn number 1. Now, that does mean that on the last lap we may think we know the name of the race winner very early on. But as soon as battles happen around here, you lose a lot of time very quickly, and all hell can break loose if they go side by side for a sustained period of time.
Good run up over the hill for Rodriguez, extending that gap just that little bit. It's not about running away from the field. It's not about pulling seconds per lap. It's just about pulling tenths and breaking out of draft range and keeping yourself comfortable in a race like this. And suddenly it does look that little bit more unlikely that Brooks gets by. Looks that little bit more unlikely for Jesse Lyon, as there was a bad couple of corners for Jesse. Suddenly Nicky Chan is all over the back of that number 115 of the defending champion. The battle for third could be on. We could get 2 of those purple and green cars on the podium if Nicky Chan can make this happen.
He certainly could, and that came from a mistake. So Jesse Lyon has gone from maybe searching for second, searching for a win, an outside shot at a win. Well, that's certainly gone away now. It's going to be about retaining a podium. Nicky Chan all over the back of Lyon here into turn number 1. This will be the closest fight here in the top 5, no doubt. Chan not close enough though. This may well have to wait for the last lap as well.
Nothing doing into turn 1, but you want to talk about experience, Ewan? I haven't mentioned this about Nicky Chan yet. This guy has been sim racing since before sim racing was sim racing. It started in the 80s and 90s in the computer games and the Grand Prix Legends and even the precursors to that. This guy's riding on experience that may have started before Jesse Lyon was born, and he's trying to use that to take advantage. Nothing doing in the first sector just yet, but Chan's putting on the pressure.
Be a bit unfair on him to say that. Make him feel old.
Experience is
anyway.
good.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But there we go. It's going to be in towards turn 1, I think, and this is maybe the most likely battle to change, actually. I think Kerry Brooks is going to fall slightly short, as Bryce Rodriguez has just found another gear to grab at the end of a stint here. As the fuel gets low into those final few laps, he was so good in the first stint. It's looking like he's repeating that in the second.
Believe it will be 1 lap to go at the line. It's been a race against the clock, so it could be close. We could get 2, but I don't think it's actually going to be that close. Rodriguez actually starting to run away. Brooks did look a little bit like Kerry Brooks rather looked a little bit like he was going to make it a battle, but I don't think it's going to happen as Rodriguez rounds the final corner for the penultimate time. The driver from the Hudson Valley region is going to take the white flag, and if he can keep it mistake-free, this could very well be the number 24 doing well and dominating the end stage of this race. But he's got 1 more lap to hang on.
Does just 1 more lap around here to seal a win for Bryce Rodriguez down into turn 1 again. It's single file again in this fight for third place. By the way, Bryce Rodriguez 6th deep in the points going into today. 1 podium came 2 weeks ago at Zandvoort. He started the day at a whopping 40 points off Chris Pies, and even with the win here, Bryce Rodriguez is going to be, as expected, probably out of championship contention. It's not been a bad day all in all for the championship leader.
It's been a part-time season for Bryce Rodriguez, but coming into next season potentially with the run he's had in these final couple of races, he could very well be a championship contender when the next season comes around. It was in the first race a couple of races ago, it was a 5th place finish or a 6th place finish. Second race, it was a 3rd place finish. And I guess it was only a mathematical question that it was going to end up being a win after jumping up the order like that and dividing by 2, dividing by 3 every time. Yeah, what a race this has been. 3 different leaders and 3 different drivers who look like they might be able to run away with this thing. It all started with Cyphers with that huge move on lap 1 around the outside. Looked like he was going to drive off into the sunset, but a mistake took him out of it. He's going to finish in P5, all things considered. Brooks was ready to pounce. The surprise pole sitter pounced, led a couple of laps, but the late pace for Bryce Rodriguez has been absolutely incredible. It's been the class of the field, and out of the final corner, it's a mistake-free final lap, and the checkered flag is in hand, representing the Hudson Valley region. Bryce Rodriguez wins for the first time this season, and very much keeps himself alive in the conversation for the championship next season. But the championship conversation this season is officially going to come down to Thomas Briggs and Christopher Pies. 6th for Briggs, 9th for Pies. If my math is correct, it's going to be a 6-point difference between those 2 drivers coming into the championship finale at the Daytona Road Course next week. And that is going to be a lot of math to do next week, a lot of calculations for an exciting championship finale.
You are correct. The top 2 would seal it then for Chris Pies next week, but as shown by the previous performances this season, he's only been in the top 2 twice, so that's not a foregone conclusion whatsoever. Great driving though from Bryce Rodriguez to become the 5th different race winner in 6 races.
3 different regions on the podium. Kerry Brooks might not have come away with the win, but still an excellent race. Pole and 2nd. Jesse Lyon, defending champion, rounds off the podium representing the Yellowstone region. Nikki Chan, kind of the underdog of the day in that 000. And Derek Cyphers, a little bit of heartbreak for Derek, but still a top 5 at the end of it all. Briggs, Prescott, Siddall, Pies, and Cook rounded out the top 10. Briggs and Siddall, or Briggs and his championship rival, rather, they are going to be the biggest conversation makers next week. And Christopher Pies, Mark Nister just outside of the top 10 with an off strategy ahead of Leaf Peterson. Logan Grado, also one of those drivers on the precipice of championship contention. He will not be joining Briggs and Pies in championship contention, though, next week. Facciolo and Braun rounded out the top 15. And Gregorato, Patterson, Rodriguez, Sinclair, and Henson rounded out the top 20. Henson, great drive back from him after a spin on lap 1, drove his way back into the top 20. Melorano, Drawhorn, Minkler, Green, and Sigourney rounded out the drivers on the lead lap. Sigourney coming back from some early damage. And Kemp, Stiefel, and Woodruff ran into some early trouble. Still managed to finish on the lead lap, though. James Huth was 1 lap down after a penalty. And Justin Sang, a very unfortunate day for him, started all the way at the back, drove up about 17 spots, and then ended 6 laps down after a late incident. Lyle Eady and Chad Sosnowski, early incidents for them, meant 11 laps down and 15 laps down were their end positions.